And they put forth a number of propaganda agendas and campaigns to get it so that the public at the time would be like, we have to go to war. You must. And then the politicians were like, really? You sure? We don't really want to do this, but if that's what you guys want, okay, because we represent you. So whatever you want. And the public not realizing that they were totally manipulated into that. So Tavistock, with the help of Edward Bernays, created these things called Gallup polls. And it really applies to polls in general. But the Gallup poll was the first that like brought polling into the whole propaganda conversation. And so just some examples of some Gallup polls. So stress, worry, and anger up in the US, right? And some polls are, different visuals on how they do the polls. Gallup World Poll, right? You'll hear, like I said, there are other companies that do polls, but Gallup is considered like the gold standard. Like they're the OG poll makers. Here's another one we see. Immigration sparks greatest partisan specific concern. Right? So you have these polls. They always have these like cool looking charts. Here we have another one. US views on abortion. On May 29th, 2012, Gallup conducted a poll asking the question, with respect to the abortion issue, would you consider yourself to be pro-choice or pro-life? This infographic summarizes the poll results. And so what Gallup polls seek to convince us of is they supposedly take a small, impartial swath of the population and they poll them on abortion. And then the poll is supposed to say, well, like from this random sampling of 100 people, we can assume that this small sampling is representative of the whole country, right? But Gallup polls and all polls are not super honest, right? And they can be super manipulative. So in something like this, right, and the numbers don't really line up, but it could be like, we polled 100 people on abortion, and here's what the results said. But what they don't tell you is that the 100 people that they've polled on abortion were all extremely conservative Christians who voted for an extremely conservative anti-abortion candidate, right? Again, remember we talked about propaganda being reductive, right? And just this like very simple, black or white. People are for abortion or not for abortion, but they don't tell you that the sampling that they polled to get those numbers was already biased from the start, right? It's just one example of how polls can be wonky.